It's just after midnight on the 21st of June 2025. At Whiteman Air Force Base in rural Missouri, 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers lift off the runway one by one and turn east into the dark. Each one is carrying 2 of the largest non-nuclear bombs in the American arsenal. This is the story of how the United States bombed Iran in the middle of the night. 9 days earlier, on the 13th of June, Israeli warplanes had crossed into Iranian airspace and begun a campaign called Operation Rising Lion. Within the first 6 hours, Israel killed the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, the commander of the Revolutionary Guards, the head of Iran's Emergency Command, and at least 9 senior nuclear scientists. The strikes hit the Natanz enrichment facility, missile production sites near Tabriz, command bunkers in Tehran, and dozens of air defense radar stations across the country. Iran retaliated within a day. Waves of ballistic missiles and Shahed drones were launched at Tel Aviv, Haifa, and a military base in the Negev. Apartment buildings collapsed. People died on both sides. The war that analysts had been warning about for 2 decades was now happening, live, on every screen. In Washington, President Trump went on television and demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. Privately, the Pentagon was already moving pieces into place. A second carrier strike group was rerouted to the region. Tanker aircraft were repositioned from Europe to bases in Spain and the United Kingdom. American officials told reporters the president had not yet decided whether to join the war. The president himself said he would make up his mind within 2 weeks. 3 days later, the bombers were in the air. The American decision did not come out of nowhere. For more than 2 decades, every US president had said the same thing. Iran would not be allowed to build a nuclear weapon. Every president had also avoided the one thing that might actually stop it. In 2015, the Obama administration had signed a deal with Iran that traded sanctions relief for caps on enrichment. In 2018, Trump tore the deal up. By 2025, Iran's enrichment levels were higher than they had ever been. Negotiations between American and Iranian officials had quietly resumed in Oman earlier in the spring. The 6th round of those talks was scheduled for the 15th of June. Israel's opening strike came on the 13th. The reason the United States got involved comes down to one specific building. About 90 miles south of Tehran, near the holy city of Qom, sits a small mountain. Inside that mountain, buried under roughly 80 to 90 meters of solid rock, is the Fordow fuel enrichment plant. Fordow is where Iran spins its most advanced centrifuges. It is where the country has been producing uranium enriched to 60%, just a short, technical step away from the 90% needed for a weapon. The site was built deep on purpose. The Iranians chose that depth, so that no conventional bomb on Earth could reach it, except one. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weighs 30,000 pounds. It is shaped like a long, narrow spike. The casing is hardened steel. The fuse waits until the bomb has burrowed deep into the rock before it detonates. The United States is the only country that builds it. Only one aircraft in the world can carry and drop it, the B-2 Spirit. No ally has either the bomb or the plane, if Fordow was going to be hit from the air. The United States was the only country in the world that could do it. Just before midnight Missouri time, the 7 B-2s were joined by a second group of B-2s heading west, out over the Pacific toward Guam. Reporters tracking open-source flight data noticed the Western flight almost immediately. American officials let the story run. It was a decoy. The real strike package, the Eastern Group, flew dark and quiet across the Atlantic, refueled in mid-air several times, and slipped through coordinated gaps in Iran's badly degraded air defense network. Israeli jets had been clearing those gaps for days. The mission was given the code name Operation Midnight Hammer. By the time the bombers reached Iranian airspace, 3 different targets were already in play. Fordow was the centerpiece. Natanz, Iran's main and oldest enrichment site, was the second. The third was the nuclear research complex at Isfahan, which housed the country's largest stockpile of near-weapons-grade uranium and a uranium conversion facility. Each site had its own attack plan. Each plan had to happen within minutes of the others, so that Iran could not move material, evacuate personnel, or activate defenses between strikes. At around 2:10 a.m. local time on the 22nd of June, the first weapons hit. A U.S. Navy Ohio-class submarine submerged somewhere in the northern Arabian Sea launched more than 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles at the surface buildings at Isfahan. The Tomahawks flew low and slow across the Persian Gulf and into central Iran. Roughly half an hour later, the B-2s arrived over Natanz and Fordow. 2 bombers attacked Natanz, 5 bombers attacked Fordow. 14 GBU-57 bunker busters were dropped on the Fordow mountain in pairs, into the same handful of aim points, one after another. Each strike drilling deeper into the shaft opened by the bomb that came before it. The Pentagon would later call it the largest operational use of the B-2 in the aircraft's history. Not a single American plane was lost, not a single American shot was fired in self-defense. The entire package was back over friendly airspace before Iran had finished publicly confirming the strike had happened. Then came the question of what had actually been destroyed. President Trump went on television within hours and said the 3 sites had been completely and totally obliterated. The Pentagon was more careful. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs said only that the targets had been severely damaged. Then a leaked early assessment from the Defense Intelligence Agency surfaced. It suggested the strikes had set Iran's program back by months, not years. The administration pushed back hard. A later assessment from the CIA used the phrase severely damaged and estimated a setback of 1 to 2 years. Independent satellite analysis showed large craters above Fordow and visible damage at Natanz and Isfahan. But the centrifuge halls themselves are buried too deep for satellites to see. The truth about Fordow is still, in important ways, underground. There was also the question of the uranium. In the days before the strike, commercial satellite imagery showed unusual truck activity at Fordow. Long lines of cargo trucks parked near the tunnel entrance and then drove off again. Iranian officials made vague public statements about having taken precautions. Several Western intelligence services concluded, with varying levels of confidence, that a meaningful portion of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium had been moved out of Fordow before the bombs arrived. Where it went, no one outside Iran has said publicly. Iran's response came 3 days later. Iranian forces fired more than a dozen short-range ballistic missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American military installation in the Middle East. Iran told Qatar about the strike in advance. Qatar told the Americans. The base was almost empty when the missiles arrived. Most of them were intercepted in open desert. Nobody was killed. Within 24 hours, President Trump announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. He thanked the Iranians for what he called their very weak response. The 12-day war was over. Markets opened the next morning to find oil prices falling. Brent crude, which had spiked above $80 a barrel in the first hours after the strike, settled back below $70 by the end of the week. The shipping lanes through the Strait of Hormuz stayed open. The largest American military operation against Iran in the country's history had moved global oil prices for less than 4 days. In the year since, the official line from Washington has been that Iran's nuclear program was set back by years and that the threat is contained. The reality on the ground is harder to read. Iran cut off cooperation with international inspectors within weeks of the strike. The IAEA has not been allowed inside Fordow, Natanz, or Isfahan since the bombs fell. Satellite analysts watching the sites have reported repair work, new construction, and trucks moving in and out. Iran's parliament passed a law suspending the country's commitments under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Several senior Iranian clerics have publicly argued that the strike proved the country's mistake was not building a bomb sooner. The largest non-nuclear bombs ever made were dropped on a mountain in central Iran on the 22nd of June 2025. The mountain is still there. The centrifuges underneath it are, in some unknown number, still spinning. The inspectors are still locked out. And no one outside Iran knows where the uranium went.